Welcome to the Mothman in the Bible Belt podcast with your host, Buck Fantastic.
Girl Scout cookies.
Charlotte Pritt has been a teacher, an activist, an entrepreneur, and a politician. While serving in the West Virginia Legislature, Charlotte went to bat for hungry children, poor women, AIDS sufferers, and the environment. She's best remembered as the only person to beat Joe Manchin in a primary. In the second episode of the Mothman the Bible Belt podcast, Charlotte Pritt discusses her life, legacy, scandals, and shares her opinions of the West Virginia Democratic Party and her arch nemesis, Senator Joe Manchin. Join me, your host, Buck Fantastic, on a spirited journey through the life of one of West Virginia's most ballsy politicians, the incomparable Charlotte Pritt. You've been a state delegate, a state senator, and you ran for governor 3 times and secretary of state once. What motivated you to seek public office?
Well, actually, it was my father. I was working in the coal communities, teaching a 6-hour graduate class on writing. I was a writing instructor and part of the Bay Area National Writing Project. I was a director for West Virginia, so I traveled for the College of Graduate Studies, teaching a 6-hour graduate class in the summer to teachers who were teaching then in high school, and some of the teachers who came to the graduate class were also teaching in college. When I was down in McDowell County, the southern county in West Virginia, and unfortunately one of the most challenged financially right now because of the coal industry moving out, I was teaching down there when Gene Adair from over in Moore, West Virginia, said, Charlotte, all of these writing theories are well and good, but what do you do when children are too hungry to think? And I said, well, Gene, what do you mean? And she said, we think our children are running out. We don't think our children are eating anything on the weekends because we're running out of food on Monday morning. And I said, oh my gosh, well, we need to do something about that. That's not acceptable. And I said, anyone else? And a principal said, yes, I found a little third grader stealing food. And when I brought him to the office and, stealing food from the cafeteria, I said, what do you think you're doing? And he he put his head down and he started crying. He said, I was just taking food from my brothers and sisters. They don't have anything to eat at home. And she said, I was so heartbroken. So she said, I announced the next day that if anyone wanted to take a lunch home, for a little snack afterwards, that there would be food available. All you needed to do was stop by the cafeteria on the way to your bus stop, on the way home, and let us know and how many bags you needed. She said there's a real hunger problem. And so my dad was president of United Mine Workers Local 1766 here in the Charleston area. And we were brought up in a union home and a home of faith. And so we were taught when we were younger, and it stayed with me, that if you ever get in trouble and you need help, you go to the church and you go to the union hall. So I called Dad and I said, Dad, the teachers are telling me that the kids down here are hungry, that they're not getting enough. I don't know what's going on, but we need to get the churches and we need to get the miners. I want you to get the United Mine Workers to find out and help them, help our communities and see what's going on. And he said, you need to run for office. I said, Dad, I'm a teacher. I empower people through the use of words and thinking and things of that nature. I'm not a politician. That would ruin my reputation. I'm not interested. And he said, well, if you want to get something done, Charlotte, we need somebody that the people can trust. We need somebody that people can trust. And nobody ever wins first time out. You're not going to win, so you don't have to worry about it. Just go out there and talk about what needs to be done. So at least you can get the word out. So that's what I did. I went out, and I did win the first time out, though. That was unfortunate in some ways, but fortunate in others. But when I talked about Now, I said I'm running because I understand there are children that are hungry in some of our coal communities. And if they're hungry down south, they're probably hungry right here in Charleston and in all of our communities. We just don't know. We don't know. And they're not talking about it. And we need to find out. And so if they would talk about, well, what about prayer in school? I'd say, well, every child is not worrying about prayer in school. They're worrying about being able to be fed. They're praying for somebody to help them. This is ridiculous. You're asking about how many angels on a pinhead when children are hungry? No, we need to focus on basic elemental human rights, and that we should have a right that our children have food to eat. And we have the responsibility to make sure they have it. So unfortunately in some ways, because I was I was working for one of the universities, and we have a state law that you can't be a state employee and serve in legislature. So I had to quit basically a job that I loved, teaching throughout the state, teaching teachers how to teach composition. And then to serve in the legislature, because the more I was out and about and the more people heard me speak, I was surprised that more and more it spoke to people's heart just to have someone who wasn't really interested in being a politician, but interested in solving problems. I had a lot of students that I had taught in high school, and they were voting age then, and they said, well, Miss Pritt, you're running. Oh, yeah. Well, we'll help you. We're going to call everybody. We heard you were running for office, and we'll call all the kids in our class and make sure they talk to their parents, and they know who you are. And I did a lot of door to door to get the word out about please helping their children. And that's what I ran on. And that's I think how I won.
In 1990, West Virginia teachers walked off the job for 10 days to get a better salary. Fast forward 28 years later, teacher union leadership told striking teachers to go home without having their pay and PEIA demands met. Teachers didn't listen. They got half their demands met. West Virginia AFT President Christine Campbell chose not to run for re-election in 2018. West Virginia Education Association President Dale Lee won re-election last year, his 5th term. Have teachers lost their minds? What's going on here? I mean, what's going on within teacher unions compared to when you were serving in the legislature compared to now?
Well, I think that it's always been a misnomer that unions and people who think they're progressive go with the Democratic, go with whoever has a D. And this was interesting. When I was in the Senate, I had two corporatist Democrats used to taunt me and say, Pritt, you better quit. You better quit just standing up for the unions and standing up for the environmentalists and all these people, because you're never going to get Chambers' vote. You've got Mother Jones written on UMWA written across your forehead, and you're never going to have anybody. The Chamber's never going to give you a vote. But guess what? We're going to get all those environment. We're going to get all your votes too, because we got a D by our name. We're going to get the Chamber, and we're going to get the unions, environmentalists, because all we have to do is have a D by our name. And they would taunt those of us who are true progressives with that unfortunate truth, and you still see it. And it's a very sad misnomer, because corporatist Democrats, they are Democrats only because of being able to get those groups, large groups, get to vote. So when the unions and the environmentalists wise up and only vote for candidates who have been true to their issues, and only those candidates, then that kind of bastardization of, within the unions or within whatever will stop. I think it's the bastardization and the infiltration of organized crime within unions and leadership. And we've seen this going back. My father was involved with Miners for Democracy when they were trying to get, we had organized crime involved in. And also, I inadvertently was involved for Democrats, Teamsters for Democratic Union, when you had the Teamsters were well involved in, with before Ron Kerry, with organized crime. And that was pretty, it's something that unions have had to deal with um, throughout. And then you have these movements periodically where union leaders would just get fed up with the organized crime being in charge rather than the members. So that is an unfortunate part of it. And what Ron Kerry really cared about the people, but he didn't last very long because the Hoffa regime got back in, and of course they were with an unorganized family, so to speak. So it's a little bit, people don't like to talk about it, but everybody within the unions know, most people know what's really going on.
When you were in the House of Delegates, you introduced a bill to help victims of AIDS. This was like years ahead of its time for West Virginia.
Yes, it was. That was, I think, in 1985 or 87. It was to make certain that insurance companies could not, if you tested positive for HIV, that the insurance companies could not just drop you. And that's what was happening. They would simply drop your insurance. So if you tested positive for HIV, and regardless, because sometimes people would get a blood transfusion and they weren't testing. They didn't know to test for whether a person had HIV or not. And you might get HIV that way. And if you had HIV, then the insurance companies completely dropped you, which is absolutely insane. I mean, that should never have been happen to anybody under any situation. But that's what they were doing. So I introduced legislation, and part of that was because I had a very dear friend from high school who got AIDS early on, and I was with him when he needed help. He was one of those fortunate ones early on. They were using interferon from your blood, platelets. They were still doing experimental work, and so they tried the interferon infusions, which actually worked. I know that, I went up to, with his brother, Jeff, and I went up to be with him. We had to get an apartment there because the treatments for interferon then were very, very painful, and he could get very sick because it was having his immune system to throw up and kind of throw off the virus, HIV virus. And he got better. Actually, he completely recovered from it. And then later, and I think that the BBC did a documentary, and the Rolling Stones did an article. His name was William Harold Walker. They called him Billy in New York, and we called him Ouija here at home. But he had gone to Sissonville High School, and kind of a funny aside, I didn't know this, but he used to spill things on my majorette outfit. He was a drum major, I was a majorette, and it seemed like almost every game he was spilling something on my uniform. He said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. When we get back, I'll pick that up. I'll come to your house and I'll take that and have it dry cleaned." Well, what I did not know that he was performing at the Grand Palace, and he would perform in my majorette outfits, and he would have it dry cleaned. Then he would do a performance at one of the Grand Palace or one of the places here in Charleston, and in my majorette outfits, whether it was winter or summer or whatever. And I didn't find out about that till much later. He confessed it to me. But he, we ended up, he had always said, when we were rich and famous, we were going to go to Europe. And he wanted me to see, because he modeled some for Italian Vogue, and he wanted me to see parts of Europe. I'd never been there. And he called me from the hospital when he got it again the second time and said, "I'm dying and I'm going to leave you my emerald ring." And I said, "No, you're not. You're not leaving that. I've become infamous for being outspoken here in West Virginia on issues, and you're rich. We are going to go to Europe like you promised." And he said, "But I'm dying." I said, "No, you're not. I'm not allowing it. You're not dying yet. We're going to Europe." And he kind of chuckled and said, "Are you serious?" And I said, "Yes." So my sister and I took off. I said, "You have to wait until the session's over." So as soon as the session was over, we left. We went to Italy. He loved Italy. And we went to Rome, and he wanted me to see the different places that he loved. Firenze, looking at this Uffizi gallery there, Michelangelo's David in the Vatican. And he just wanted me to experience, his love, the places he loved. And actually it was him seeing it again. we went to Paris, and he took me to places in Paris. And my sister and I both were there, of course. And then he started getting sick at UK. When we got back, he said, I don't know how much longer I can, I'm going to last. And I'll tell you the story that Bobby Hatfield can probably corroborate. So I went back to the next session. I introduced the legislation because not many people were as fortunate as Billy. He had his money already that he could afford these treatments and things that he needed, but a lot of people couldn't. So Leonard Underwood, who was a delegate and a minister here in Kanawha County, he introduced the legislation that would be the death penalty if you got AIDS and you didn't tell everyone or whatever. And I think it was the fact that my friend was dying, and I was mumbling under my breath, like, Leonard, you idiot, don't you realize it's a death penalty? They don't have a cure for it. And Bobby Hatfield was sitting, and he went on, and he was saying some very discriminatory and ugly things about people who had AIDS, which I knew were not true. And I was almost halfway out of my seat, and I guess my hands were curled because I was afraid I might choke him and say, that's not true, or something. And Bobby Hatfield said, Charlotte. She jerked me back down. She said, you can't call the scene. And I think I did say, delegate, don't you realize that it is a death penalty? If you have AIDS, there's no cure for it at this time. So most all the legislation that I have introduced has a personal experience, a heartfelt story behind it. And I knew my friend, who was very talented, and he had the largest selection of silk flowers in New York. Lee Radswell and Paul Newman and all these people that, especially Paul Newman, who was one of my favorites, bought flowers from him. He was up for an Emmy for his flower arrangements for As the World Turns, and also the CBS Morning News, I think, was the one. Because when we went to New York, when he called us to say, I'm dying and I want to see you before I get so completely emaciated and can't talk. So I flew to New York, his mother and brothers, and we were there, a few other really close friends. And I remember us are all around his hospital bed and him telling us how much he loved us, how much he appreciated us being there with him during his most challenging and fearful times, and how much he appreciated our love. And when we went back, and I was sitting in the waiting room, because he also wanted to talk to some of us individually, there was a priest there, and he was amazed. People hear things about West Virginia and about this and that, but there's a whole part of West Virginia that the rest of the world doesn't know. They don't know about our loyalty to the people we love, and how we may have certain ideas about things, but when it's each other and people we love, we are right there for each other. And I recall him saying that there was a young man down the hall who was suffering terribly. He kept hanging on because he wanted to see his mother and dad one last time. And the priest he said, I don't know what to tell him, because when I called his parents, I said, he's not our son anymore. We have nothing to do with him. And he said, I see you all here, and I just wish that he had someone that could show him and be with him in his last hours. And I just thought about how sad it was that people have been castigated for simply having integrity with who they really are. And the incredible sadness that people have had to endure, and aloneness and harassment and betrayal, simply because they wanted to be authentic about who they really were. So I have, throughout my career, I have tried to defend and to support, just making sure that people were treated fairly and that their rights were given to them, their protections were given to them, that they were able to express who they are in a way that is protected, and that they would abide by all the laws that everybody else abides by, but they would not be discriminated against simply because of their preference or their color or their nationality. You know, I'm very strong on human rights, but I do understand the struggles to a certain degree. I'm very heterosexual myself, but I do understand because of people whom I love who have experienced such discrimination throughout the years. And there was quite a bit of it during that time. The first year, and Congressman David McKinley and I served together on the Finance Committee. And I was always getting teased because, you know, Dave was more conservative and I was a lot more progressive. And he was running in the Republican primary and I was running in the Democratic primary for governor in 1996. But before that, the second year that I came back, the Finance Committee, Dave said, well, Charlotte, are you going to introduce that legislation about HIV and insurance? I said, yeah, Dave. I said, I guess I'm going to be introducing that legislation until it passes or till I'm no longer here. And even if I am the only person whose name is on the bill and I get ridiculed and I get harassed about it. And he said, do you need a co-sponsor? And I remember saying, oh my goodness, Dave, who do you know? Who do you know, Dave, who has AIDS? And he looked down and said, my brother. That was powerful. He sponsored it. And it was interesting, too, that one of the things that Dave said, he said, you know what, Charlotte, I hope we both end up being our nominees for governor, because at least I know this. We may have different views on things, but I know that you will always listen. And I know that I can work with you on issues that are important to both of us and to the people of West Virginia. And I said, yeah, Dave, I believe that. You and I may come at a problem in a completely different way, but yes. And he said, good luck to you. And I said, good luck to you too. And so he did tell me some of the things, the shenanigans that were going on within the Republican Party and about the Joe Manchin and Underwood working together, the Democrats, corporate Democrats, to try to working with Underwood to defeat me. So, and they did. But Dave and I, that was a moment. And I never had like the animosity that I see between the two parties that are going on now. We never had that. I mean, we would jokingly say, oh, you know, you're a this or that warmongering, whatever, crazy person. Or they might say, oh, you're just a peacenik. Or I remember once that Slim Wells would say, well, Charlotte, what legislation are you going to be saying for the little people? I said, they're not leprechauns, Slim. They're simply people who don't have as much money as you. And so I guess because I've always been a problem solver and not really interested in being a politician, whether I'm there or not, it's not the biggest thing. It's getting the problem solved, whatever needs to be solved. I used to say, I really wanted to be a Pulitzer Prize-winning poet and journalist like George Orwell or Dylan Thomas. I wanted to go into the arts and make a difference through empowering people through writing. But on the way to my Pulitzer Prize, I got hijacked into politics and was never able to finish a lot of things that I wanted to. But at least for some short shining moment, people were discussing issues rather than partisanship.
When you served in the West Virginia legislature, how did corporate money influence legislation?
Wow, there's so many examples of that. Well, I served on Finance Committee. One of the most flagrant was serving on the Finance Committee. Our tax system is so skewed. I mean, it's absolutely outrageously skewed for big corporations. It's skewed against the small businesses and against the people, and all the tax breaks that large corporations, and it's still going on, the controversy about the taxes that the current Republican governor, Jim Justice, who ran as a Democrat, and Democrats, just because he was running as a D by his name, they voted him in initially. But now, all of the taxes that he hasn't paid. But so I think we got paid Carnegie Mellon $300,000 for a more equitable tax system here in West Virginia that was more fair, that would it would take the tax burden off the small businesses and people, and then share it more equitably with large corporations. Well, we've paid all that money. We looked at it, and it went to the floor of the House, and the coal lobbyist, and Larry Schifano was from Morgantown area. He was a coal operator, I believe. And, Joe Manchin, also from that part of West Virginia, is in the coal business himself. I don't think he owns. I think he's a broker. I forget how he gets his money, but it's from coal and pharmaceuticals, I understand. So they completely wrecked. They wrecked the bill that the Finance Committee brought down that would make a more equitable tax system by simply being able to get it back to where it was, where the big coal companies hardly paying anything, or the corporatists and the corporations, timber, coal, whatever it was, hardly pay anything, kind of like what's going on with gas. We hardly had any severance tax. And because the corporate net income tax would offset the severance tax, which meant they paid hardly anything. And so we were starved. Here we were being taxed and starved of any revenue that could really help with infrastructure or education or whatever. So that was one example. And the other was when I first came in, I was a delegate a little bit naive about things. And there was the president of the Senate, which is a very president of the House, rather, which is a very powerful position, because you decide in Rules Committee what bills are going to be taken up, or what bills never see the light of day, or what bills go to how many committees. And so you can bury a bill by making go to 3 committees, or putting it in one committee when it should go to finance and something else. So you can fast track or kill bills by sending them to multiple committees. And it's a very important position. But Larry Schifano, co-operator, and then Joe Albright, who was a lawyer from over in Wood County, were running for president of the Senate. And most everyone was committed, but the young ones, those of us who were just there, they didn't know where we were going to go. And I think the unions were supporting Joe because Schifano was more company man. But I thought it was interesting, and I was an educator, and I was director of communications for Kanawha County Schools, or the writing project at that time. I think I had to step down as director of communications, become the writing project director, or writing in residence, and half part-time with West Virginia State Graduate College, where I was teaching the graduate class on writing, and then part-time for Kanawha County Schools. And I got contacted by one of the assistant superintendents that if I would vote for Larry Schifano, they would give me a job at the State Department of Education, making a lot more money. And I thought, that doesn't sound right. And so I mentioned it to Joe Albright, or to one of the Sue Davis, who was an educator and also was already in the House, an educator from over in Cabell County, Huntington area. I said, are they allowed to do that? She said, absolutely not. That's bribery. And so I talked to Joe about it, and I went with him. And of course, needless to say, I didn't get offered anything else after that, because people had a sense that I would not take too lightly from that. The corporations had an undue influence, and they also, their lobbyists would be down at the legislature giving misinformation a lot of times about what was really going on. And they ran the extractive industries when I was there. They had a coal suite where they had prostitutes, and anything you wanted was over there. And on banking insurance, I was told by the banking chair, he ended up, unfortunately, or whatever, Bob went to prison and somebody else went to prison. Larry Tucker went to prison. There were several people when I was there, and then Arch Moore actually eventually went to prison. All of them for kind of the governor, whom I first served under, for illegal activities that were going on. But I was told there would be, for those of us on banking insurance, we would receive a credit card. And I was so naive. I said, well, I already have a credit card. I don't need one. They were trying to tell me, well, no, yes, this credit card, you don't have to worry about paying it off. And I said, oh, yeah, I always keep my bills intact. And I still didn't get it, that we were getting a credit card that no one would see. Our expenses would be paid, especially if we voted and on the right way. And that was Banking Insurance Committee.
Is that still going on?
I don't know. I never received my card, but you can look at the bills and see what kind of bills are coming out to know. I also would say on banking insurance, I think this was Tom Miller, or it was Miller, and I can't. He was the lobbyist for the small banks, because the big banks were just rolling over small banks all kinds of ways. And the banking insurance was just filled up. That committee was filled up with bankers and insurance agents. I think I was the only person. I was this educator. I didn't get on education committee because I already knew about that. And I would be able to know about what bills were coming through, if they were good or bad. But I said, we needed someone who was progressive on banking, insurance, small business, finance committee, to find out what these people are up to and what's really going on, to speak up for the citizen, the average citizen. And there was some bill, and I said, well, how is this? I think it was charging $25 for an overdraft. I said, well, that doesn't seem right. I mean, if someone overdrafts, if they overcharge, it's probably some college student or someone who's just trying to their penny. What if it was only $5 overdraft? And that doesn't seem. What about a percentage of how much it is that you get paid, and if it's an overdraft fee of the check that you overdrafted? Oh no, we need it. I said, wait a minute. I want to know, how are some of these pieces of legislation, how are they going to affect the consumer? And I was told that the lobbyist for the small banks told me later. He said, in all my years lobbying down here, both on the Senate Finance, Banking and Insurance Committee, because I served on both, I served on the House Banking and Insurance, and I went ahead and asked for the banking insurance on the Senate side as well. Of all my years, and this is when I first went on in the House, I have never heard a delegate or a senator ask, how is this going to affect the consumers? Never. You're the first person. And I thought, you have to be kidding. You mean you've never had anyone ask, how is this legislation going to affect the consumer? He said, never. So that just gives you an idea. And this is what's going on. I mean, it's going on even worse on the national level. I see it all the time. The national level is so captured by the big pharma, banking and insurance. I mean, it's gross. It's gross.
Did you take a lot of corporate money when you were in the legislature?
None.
Was it hard to resist?
No. I mean, they already knew. I mean, my brother Roger, he was my finance person. No, mine was all grassroots. I was a grassroots candidate when I ran for governor in 1996. And so, I introduced community reinvestments. The bankers did not want that. And I finally got it passed, but then they didn't really put the rules and it had been passed before, where you have to put so much of our money has to go back into the hands of the people, to be used for small loans or college loans or small businesses or something like that, rather than just being captured and used by their friends, and a lot of small banks. Well, they were really furious about that. They didn't want that. So, and I fought them. And so the bankers didn't like me because of, some of my votes and some of my comments on banking and insurance. I tried to get a midwifery license bill through the House and the Senate. It got to the House and the Senate both, but then it got killed at the behest of the American Medical AMA and Conference Committee. But we had to for that. When the Hospital Association was sending poor pregnant women from one hospital to another, I led a filibuster in the House I had a meeting, pro-choice and pro-life. I called Judy, Judy's last name right now. She was pro-life, Judy Romano, who was in charge of pro-life at the time. And I called Judy. I said, Judy, this is a place where we can all agree. The Senate just tabled a bill that would force hospitals, that with Halliburton money, that means our taxpayer money, would force them to take poor pregnant women who are trying to have their babies, because poor pregnant women, some of the women and children are dying because the hospitals don't want to take them because they think there may be a risk, and they're saying, no, we're filled, you're here, there, and people, they're having babies in trucks and cabs, or the baby's dying, they're dying. And they just tabled that. We agree that we want those who want their babies, we want our babies to have a chance, and we need your help. I'm going to call a press conference at here at the Capitol, and can you bring pro-life women to come to say we want that bill passed so our women who want to have their babies can? And she said, how many people do you need, Charlotte? I said, as many as you can bring. And so we had pro-choice and pro-life delegates and senators who were working for us, because the women wanted this bill. And we were not going to let any Senate bills out of the House until the Senate took the bill up. And I remember that the president of the Senate, Dan Tonkovich at the time, called me out of Finance Committee, called me over to the Senate, and called me every name. You unmitigating bitch, you little this and that. I said, you can call me anything you want. I don't care. I am not letting any of your bills go until you bring that bill. He said, well, we're going to get it out of committee. I said, no, that's not good enough. You get it out of committee, you pass it out of the Senate, and bring it back to the House for us to vote on it, or we're not going to let any of your bills go. That's just that simple. I don't care what you call me. You can call me any name you want. This is not about you. This is about poor pregnant women who want to have their babies. It's about the babies of West Virginia and poor people, not about you, Senator. And so I left, and we got a lot of people were saying, Charlotte, they're holding up this bill, they're holding up that bill. And I said, no, please just be with me a little bit longer. And they finally folded. They sent the bill over, and we passed the bill. So, and we got the bill passed. But I remember that Dan Tonkovich called me in again. I thought, oh no, what's he going to say now? I was surprised. He said, Delegate Pritt, he called me up at the podium. Damn good job. You did a damn good job. I'm proud. I said, well, I'm surprised you aren't calling me long names. He said, no, I could tell you really you cared about that. It was important to you. And you did a good job maneuvering and keep standing your ground until you got it passed. That's how things are done down here. I said, yeah, I'm beginning to understand. So you can't be lily-livered. You cannot just be, oh, well, they wouldn't let us like Biden's doing. He knows better than that. Either those people are the most lily-livered cowards, Biden and the whole Democratic, or they would have, or they're completely stupefied, because you can get minimum wage through. They control everything. There's no excuse for them not. And using Joe Manchin as an excuse, that's bad cop, good cop. They could care less about us, or they'd be up there doing what I did. And so when I ran in 1996, my brother, Rod, that's just a few of the things I did. But my brother said, he called me in and said, we're having a hard time, Charlotte, raising money. I said, well, just let's get $10 here and $10 there. He said, we've been doing that. He said, you realize that we have stacks of people sending in $10? We have like $500,000 of $10. You really don't have, you have any idea why that's doing to people? He said, is there anyone with money in this state that you have not ticked off? The bankers don't want to give me any money because you need your investment. The doctors aren't going to give me any money because of that midwifery bill that you introduced. And they had to pay a lobbyist to get it defeated. The hospital association, they're not going to pay me to give you any money because of what you did with the delegate who was trying to protect, you're making all the hospitals take poor people. You did this thing about a PEIA, the dentists and people that if they didn't take poor people, they wouldn't be eligible to take PEIA. So all the medical profession, except your own family doctors who love you and they're going to support you. Well, let's see who else has money. Insurance company, oh no, after some of that legislation, no, they're not going to help you. Let's see. He said, who else might have some money? Can you think of anybody that you haven't ticked off through your legislation? I said, well, that severance tax thing that you've been introducing every year. No, the coal companies, nobody with that. I said, I don't want their money anyway. He said, I know, but if you did, he said, a lot of these people give $1,000 to everybody just in case to cover their bet. I said, well, Roger, I'm sorry. There must be some people out there who appreciate what I did. He said, oh yeah, the people who are, the homeless, the people who are in mental institutions, for all the work you've done to try to make sure they're okay, people with mental illness, all those people incarcerated, wanting to make sure that but guess what? They don't vote and they don't have any money. I said, I'm sorry. He said, I know. He said, it's okay, Charlotte. He said, I'm proud of what you've done. He said, but it does make it hard. I just want you to know. I said, well, I'm campaigning as hard as I can. And Joe Manchin outspent us they outraised, we had $1 million something. I think he had 2.5. They outspent us 2-1, I think. And we still beat him. I didn't have one newspaper, didn't have the establishment. No, I think in the primary I did. I think I had, in Clarksburg, maybe, Ed Sweeney or Ed, what was his name? No, we didn't have any corporate, I didn't have any corporate money for all the good reasons, because I had been fighting for the people.
What's your thoughts about the West Virginia legislature getting rid of Medicaid funding of abortion via that referendum?
Well, I think this is what happens when you don't support the candidates who are brave enough to stand up. This is, I saw that coming, and I tried to tell people at West Virginia Free that they needed to, I had the Susan B. Anthony Award-winning, award for work on behalf of women and children and women. I've been a strong supporter of women's right to choose. However, personally, if I could, and I did, I actually ended up getting married during the campaign in 1996 because I got pregnant and I refused to have an abortion. Most people don't know that. Kind of making that public right now for the first time. And because I really wanted children all my life, and I really felt like that this was my chance. And so Jim Midkiff married me. He had asked me to marry him. He had jokingly said, would you marry me if you weren't running for governor? And I said, but I am running for governor. So that's secretary. That's ridiculous. And I didn't think I could get pregnant. And he said, yeah, well, I said, if you don't want to marry me, I have a good friend who will marry me so I can have this baby. I want to have this baby. And he said, okay, we will. And that I lost the baby on the campaign trail, which was an incredible loss. But I remember my friend saying to me, but I thought you were, why don't you just have an abortion? You're for women's right to choose. I said, I've always said this. If I had the opportunity and I was physically able to and financially able to, I would have my child. But I don't know what other people's circumstances are. It's between a woman and God. It's not between, the legislature and some woman or anyone else, because no one knows the circumstances but those two people. And no legislature can make it right or wrong. No one can. And I'm not making judgment because I don't know other people's. I'm just saying for myself. And I said, well, did you all think I was just saying that for political something? Did you not believe me when I said it? And they looked at me and said, well, I said, you didn't. You didn't think I was sincere, did you? You just thought I was saying that so I could get votes. I said, I'm having this baby, and that's it. And they said, okay, all right, we'll help you. So what do I think about it? I think this is something between that the legislature has no business being involved. It's between a woman and God. It's between a woman and her doctor about the health, and if you really care about women and children, if you care about children, why do we have all these children that are being sex trafficked right now? Why do we have these children whose children and not only in West Virginia, but throughout the United States are being sold? They're harvesting their organs. Why are we not? There should be not one child in poverty. If you are going to say you are going to have this child, but then you're going to have to take care of them. And if you can't take care of them and feed them, then we're going to put them in a foster home, and they may or may not, who knows what's going to happen to them. And then we're going to put them in prison if they don't act right. And then we're going to execute them. I mean, it's pure insanity.
Why couldn't the West Virginia legislature secured increased mine safety protections for miners in the 90s to protect them from black lung and physical injuries that the UMWA has kind of been dragging their feet on.
I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on there. I'm not as familiar with that. I do know that they took a miner off the board, health and safety. That's another time when I was speaking out. I was a freshman down there, and they gave us a bill. This was under Arch Moore. It was in the 80s. And I recall that they gave us the bill. We were supposed to be they gave it one night, and the next day we were supposed to be talking about amendments, and then we'd pass the bill. And so I took it as a 300-page bill, and we didn't get it. And I took it home, and I said, Dad, we've got to read this. You know, being a former educator and teaching research and research design to respiratory therapists and all these kinds of things, I took those things seriously. And so I had 3 or 4 people. We would take 100 pages at a time. And then I would say, okay, I don't know what is this? And somebody would say, oh my God. And so they were stripping. And that bill that was stripping took a miner off the Health and Safety Board and all kinds of things. And so when Larry Swan got up, the minority, the Republican to deliver the bill, and I would get up, and I didn't want to. It was like my first speaking on the floor, you know, of the House, and I got up and I said, and I think that we also called and asked that the miners, UMWA, that they would have miners down there to listen to this, and you know, and they could help me if there was something else that needed to be said, you know. But I got up and I said, Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry, but that's not right. What he's telling you is not right. I read the bill last night. I don't know if anybody else did, but I took it home and read it. And if you'll turn to page 45, section 2, this says something completely different than Delegate Swan, Mr. Speaker. And I read it. People were looking at it. That sounds different from what he's saying. And people were saying, oh, shit, yeah, she's right. And then he'd say something else. And I'd say, Mr. Speaker, may I speak? He'd say, yes. I said, if you'll turn to page 175, that's not what's in the bill. The bill's the opposite. And, you know, and then it was like, holy heck. And finally, it was like an old-timey church revival. I was the only one speaking. Then somebody would get up and say, Mr. Speaker, she's right. This will do such and such, and we can't have this. And so it's like a all-time revival meeting. And so we almost defeated the bill, but we didn't have quite enough people to defeat it. But when I told them, I said, you know what? My family members are going to be affected by this. My dad is a United Mine Worker. My uncle is a United Mine Worker. I've got a brother who's a United Mine Worker. And you're taking a safety committee man off the Mine Health and Safety Committee. They're the only people who know what's going on. The rest of these people have never been in the mines. They don't know what's dangerous or what is not. And I said, there are going to be people die. Of course, that was before the Sago mine disaster. My dad was also a safety committee man, and he said that a lot of times that was more important than even being president, because a safety committee man, they would try to get you to do all this stuff and not talk about what was going on. And you had to be a really principled person to not be bought off.
Do you think that the UMWA has sold out, pandering to the war on coal, garbage, and also endorsing a workplace safety-hating coal baron for governor in 2016?
Yeah, I do think that. I think all of the unions had. They did. They just go with the Democrat. And that's disastrous, because, you know, I tried to tell people when I was running in 2016, even national magazines, I think American Prospect or The Nation, said there's only one real Democrat running, and she's running as a Green Party, Mountain Party. Jim Justice is a Republican, and the Republican's a Republican. He was a Republican that just turned Democrat long enough to run. And he had terrible voting. I mean, even the environmentalists. I said, you know, he has more fines as far as polluting than any other serious polluting than any other coal operator out there, and you are endorsing him. And he has more mine health and safety violations than anybody. How can United Mine Workers or anybody support him? You don't have to. If you don't have enough guts to support me with my 100% voting record and going to bat for for union members the entire 8 years that I served, 2 terms in the House and 1 in the Senate. If you don't have enough guts to go with me, then the least you can do, is not endorse anyone. No one else running deserves your endorsement. And then he switched over to Republicans, and they didn't get anything. They all got kicked out. So, I mean, it's just, I don't know if they're just stupid or corrupt. That's the only thing. Clueless, cowardly, or complicit. I call them the CCCs.
Did West Virginia Democratic Party Chair Belinda Biafore really send out an email accusing you of working for the GOP when you ran for governor in 2016?
Yes, and we started to sue her because, you know what? Not because that kind of misinformation and lies, saying that I was taking money from them. There was no shred of that's the kind of thing that the Democratic Party has become. You could expect it from maybe the Republicans if you think that they're whatever. But the Republicans are a lot more honest than the Democrats. Democrats act like they're going to do something for you, and they screw over you. They do it behind. They're sneaky. Not all of them, of course, because you know that I was a big Tulsi Gabbard fan because she had enough courage to speak the truth. And you saw what they did to her. The Democratic Party could not stand anybody with integrity. And what they did to Nina Turner, who's another person whom I like a lot. But what they did was just a bold-faced lie, and they knew it. But they were
Why
afraid
did you leave the Democratic Party?
I left the Democratic Party here in West Virginia because I knew it left the people of West Virginia. It left the people. And I wasn't going to be a part of a brand that was corrupt and didn't really, it just was a fraudulent party. And some of our groups they say that they're for the people, but they're just clueless and cowardly or complicit.
Do you think the Democratic Party is pushing labor to the right?
No, I think labor will go anywhere the Democratic Party is. Now, here's the thing I'll tell you. When I was running in 1992, and Gaston Caperton was a right to worker, I remember having dinner with Russ Isaacs and John Lyons. They played racquetball together. John was the superintendent at Kanawha County Schools, and so I was working at Kanawha County, I think then, and I went over. We'd meet like once a week at Tidewater and just talk about what was going on. And Russ Isaacs and I'm trying to think of his name now, who was real big with the Republicans. He owned Hex. It'll come to me, but he and the owner of Hex had a falling out, and he was a big Arch Moore person. And then Russ was saying, we're going to get Gaston in. I'll have my governor, and we need you to help. I said, I'm not going to help Gaston. He's a right to worker. It's not, I'm a union person. They said, well, that doesn't make any difference. That's why we put D in there to get the name out for people to get to. I said, I'm not helping him. I don't dislike Gaston. I said, but that would be cruel. He's dyslexic and he has a hard time, and he's going to have to give a lot of speeches and do a lot of things. Plus, he doesn't know diddly squat about what's going on in government. He doesn't know anything about that. And you need to have somebody who's in there. I said, at least Arch knew how things worked. And it wasn't like, unfortunately, I wish he had been more honest about things, but no, I can't do that. That's just wrong on every level. So they planned that. They planned the whole thing for Gaston to be there, and they got the unions to go along with him, even though he was right to worker. And so it's just the Democratic Party. It's a partisan thing. And you look at Hillary Clinton was Republican most of her life. So was I'm trying to think some of the other people that were on there that were running. But Hillary, mostly Republican. Donald Trump was a Democrat most of the time. When he was involved with Epstein, he was a Democrat, I'm pretty sure. And then he switched over to Republican, and Hillary switched over to Democrat, and people just switch back and forth, whatever's convenient for them. They don't care. They don't have any loyalty to a party. They're corporatists. They have loyalty to one thing: money, corporations, making money. And they don't have loyalty to the unions or anybody else like that. And so the unions just get taken in. They're more interested in power than they are their membership or empowering the people. But I'm pro-union, but I'm not happy with what they've done. And I think that that's, what we're seeing, that even good people can be in the positions and they get a little visit. I got one of those visits in 1992. Somebody told me that the president, Daddy Bush, wasn't happy that I was running for governor. And I said, well, he wouldn't know me from a load of coal. They said, oh, yes, he does. He and Senator Byrd made a little deal that if Byrd said he would be helpful and as far as finance and appropriations for his next term, if the Republicans didn't send anybody in to help plead Benedict. And that was before you got in. I said, I got drafted. I wasn't intending to run. I got drafted to run in 92. And that was when I said, I wasn't. And so now you're telling me that the president of the United States is upset with me? That's ridiculous. Why would he care? And then they told me all this stuff. So there are all these deals being made in Congress, that we don't know about on this level. And there was a lot of fighting in the coal fields and in the tank, when they wouldn't let me speak in 1992, even though I had a 100% voting record with AFL-CIO, they were going to go with the incumbent in Fairmont. There's a little blurb in the Fairmont paper that said, no, thank you. Well, I just marched in my high heels and in my suit. I marched into the meeting in Fairmont and said, I deserve to speak. My father is the president of 9 of 9 Workers, Local 1766. I have a 100% voting record with AFL-CIO. You're having a meeting today, and you're letting a person who has treated the teachers awful and your union members awful, and you're going to be endorsing him rather than letting me speak, who's been your closest ally down there. This is and so two big guys escort me out, and my feet are literally off the floor. I'm not even able to walk. They lift me out, and I just yell as they're taking me out. If you want to hear a real union person, those of you who care about somebody who cares about you, come outside and listen to me. And so actually 300 of them came outside. I don't know, maybe about half of them came outside, maybe more than half. And they threw me a bullhorn. I climbed up on a tank with some of the guys helping me in high heels and a suit. And I remember that Joe Powell came up, he kept, because we were outside before it was over. The newspaper said people came out to hear me after it, but no, it was before it was over, because they left the building and came outside to hear me, because Joe Powell was coming up the driveway, and I called him a little liberal coward. I said, Joe, you know my voting record. How can you do this? And when I, in 1996, was the nominee over Joe Manchin, Joe sent a letter to my father saying, we are so proud to finally have someone that the unions can get fully behind with all of our heart and soul. And they were.
What's your thoughts on Belinda Biafore trying to push through an affirmative action plan without the West Virginia Democrats Affirmative Action Committee caucus having input?
I think that's just the craziness of the Democratic Party, thinking that they can do whatever they daggone well please. It's authoritarian and it's fascist. And it's not egalitarian, and it shows you right there that they could care less. They're just doing window dressing.
Do you think this is going to disenfranchise a lot of Black and Latinx Democrat voters and cause them to exit the party?
Well, everybody should have exited the party and gone to the Green Party some time ago, like I did and like some of the other Democrats.
When you were involved in West Virginia Democratic Party politics, how inclusive do you think the party was of its minority members?
We've never included our African American or people of color like we should have and could have. We've taken advantage. The Democratic Party took advantage of people of color, people who were didn't have money. They try to act as if they were a foil to the Republican Party, but they're just a Republican Party mini-me. The Democratic Party should have all these African Americans, and they should be the only people making decisions about it, not Belinda Biafore and some all-white community or group of people. That's absurd. My dad was a great influence in the sense of social justice and compassion and understanding. And he said, I don't want my family, I don't want you to be prejudiced against anybody. I don't want you to be prejudiced against people who have a lot of money or this or that. Just look at what they do. Look at the character. Because you'll find good people and varmints in every situation. So look at the person. Just don't assume that because they're this or that, they're going to act a certain way. You give them a chance. You find out what they're doing by what they do, their actions. That was really good advice. And my grandmother, who was a true Christian of the death sort, she wasn't judgmental. She looked at it from a standpoint of love and how can we help? What can we do? An example of that, when Charlie Manson did all those things and was sentenced, and my grandmother said, oh, I remember him from church. He was a foster child. And I remember how sad he looked. He always had such a sad face. And I thought, wonder what that little boy's been through. And she said, now look what's happened to him. She didn't say, look at that monster. She said, look what's happened to him. And that was the kind of compassion and coming from a truly, if you think of what would Christ do, that's how Christ would be, not judging everybody and saying this and that.
What's your thoughts on Gaston Caperton's run as governor?
Well, I mean, I told you about how Gaston got there. He got there because Leslie Isaacs wanted somebody that he can kind of control. And basically, when he ran for governor, he was put in there by corporatists, the branch of the party that were more for corporations and business. That was Lloyd Jackson's group. And, he was for consolidation and school board authority and all that. And I was against that because I know local control is where you really have control, and that the little schools were the community, hub of community in these little towns throughout West Virginia. They were, where we had the pie socials and people met and people were, and you could go and be involved. If you were poor, and the kids going to a poor school could become class president. If you go to a big school, do you think they ever become class presidents? No. So if you want really, and then just common sense, do the private schools have big schools? No, they have very small private schools.
Do you think Robert C. Byrd was a good U.S. senator or a complete and total embarrassment to the state?
Byrd was, he was a player. He knew how to play the game. Now, I wouldn't say he was very conservative. He didn't like me because I upset the apple cart, and because I had spoken once about, somebody said, well, did Byrd help you? And I said, no, because, Byrd had been a member of the Ku Klux Klan, and he wanted to have complete control of everybody, and I wasn't one of those he had complete control over. And, I was too progressive.
When you ran for governor in 2016 as a mountain partier, did you get much support from West Virginia progressives?
No. And I thought that was it was very telling, wasn't it? No. I was, Mother Jones award winner for West Virginia Citizens Action Group, and they actually were making calls for Jim Justice. I called him out on it, and I love my friend Gary Zuckett. So I told him what I thought. He didn't like it too well, but Gary and I are good friends, and we will be good friends. But I said, you meant it. You really, not only do you hurt me, but you hurt your members. I mean, why would anyone trust West Virginia CAG after you all doing that? Why would anyone trust West Virginia Free? I just asked Margaret, I said, Margaret, just let your membership know, if you can't bring yourself to endorse me, let them know that my life was threatened on the choice issue. I had to have, because I was holding bills in committee, there were only two of us who were pro-choice, and that was Jay Spears and me when I was vice chair of the Health and Human Resources Committee. And Joe Manchin was trying to unseat my committee. And I told Joe, I said, Joe, I know what you're doing. You're just posturing for that committee because I know you very well. And I know the skeletons in your closet. And I don't think you guys really want to know. You don't want this out here because, you know what? A lot of you are going to be sued for paternity suits if your friends can't have abortions. Not that I want that. I'm just saying you do not need to go after this. Now, if you want to talk about me and all of that, I think the best thing you can do is to go out there and pontificate so you can get the pro-life people thinking that that's where you are, and you leave this committee alone. And he did. And they had rallies down there saying, you know, I was a baby murderer and everything. And I just wanted to keep the choice just because I'm really probably a libertarian socialist or progressive. I'm very, very strong on our rights and not being discriminated against. And I'm very much against imperialism. And I'm very much for, you know, giving rights for the people, you know, maybe libertarian progressive. But so I just said that, and so they were calling me, and I had to have police escort because my life was threatened so much. And Sandy Fisher, who was my executive secretary, was in the office with me, not in the secretarial pool. And she said people were calling and say they were going to take a baseball bat to us and come in there and beat our brains out. These were pro-life people. I said, well, you know, and I told Margaret, I said, Margaret, my life was on the line for choice, and I was able to keep choice in West Virginia the entire time that I was in the House and the Senate. We never had this, but I went through a lot, life-threatening things in order to do it. You can't even let your membership know because they're young. They don't know what I went through in order to protect choice in West Virginia, to just give people a choice. And no, we can't do that. And then look what Jim Justice did, a Democrat did. If you don't support the people who've been there for you, it sends a message to everybody else. So they'll say, well, you know, if that group can't even support Pritt, and there she was, you know, there's been no one that put themselves on the line more than her for the environment, you know, or for these other things.
Margaret currently serves on the Kanawha County Democratic Executive Committee. I've yet to see any kind of press release or any kind of news article about anyone from the Kanawha County Democratic Executive Committee condemning any Democrat against voting against choice, you know, since she's been in it. Does that shock you?
No, because I think this is what's happened to the unions. It's what happened. It's their unholy alliance with a particular party, and they need to stop that, because that's more about power than it is about empowering, about freedom.
Rumors have swirled for years about pro-life Senator Joe Manchin impregnating one of his mistresses and paying for the abortion. Is it true?
I don't know. I can't speak to that. I do know that Joe was known for, and I do know of a case when there was one of the interns who was working at one of the pages and in the Senate, and I was dating Steve Williams, who's the mayor of Huntington right now at that time, and we were both in the House, and he came over, was, you know, like the last night of the session or during the session, you know, when we were there till maybe midnight or something, had to be back. It was one of that last week, which was really, really horrific. And he came over and said, Joe wants to know if we want to go down to his place. I think it was, if he wanted to fly us down with him and his mistress at the time, the person he was seeing that everybody kind of knew, if he wanted to fly down there and spend the night and fly back in the morning. And I looked at Steve and I said, I can't believe that you're asking me this. He said, well, Joe just wanted to know if we wanted to go down. I said, Steve, do you not know me any better than to think that I would want to participate in something like that? I know his wife, Gail. I don't know her well. I know the page better than I do her. But I don't want to participate in it. And you know what? I don't think I want to date you anymore. If you do, if you have such a low, if you think that I would stoop to do that, to be a part of that, you don't know who I am, and I don't think I need to date you anymore. And he said, honey, what? Now, wait. I just, you know, I just thought, you know, and so, you know, needless to say, I didn't go. And Steve and I did continue dating, but, you know, I was furious with him. I was furious.
Was the page underage?
No, this page was not underage. She was married to somebody else. Everyone knew about it. I mean, everybody in the legislature knows that Joe's been a hound dog. He's been a hound dog for as long as I've known him. And I feel sorry for his wife. That's why it was just ridiculous that Joe was behind getting Bob Wise to step down. because he wanted to run for governor. And that whole thing about Bob Wise being accused of somebody, I knew who was behind it. And sure enough, it was, I mean, we all knew it was Joe trying to get rid of Bob quickly.
But it was true. Bob Wise did cheat on his wife, right?
I don't know for sure. There were some emails or something like that. I can't recall. That to have Joe Manchin of all people, I mean, because it was such a wide. There were several couples marriages that were broken up, and then that the two people got together when I was down there. Now I won't go into all of them, but and in the House, and I don't know about the Senate. But
when Joe Manchin was governor, he froze state worker pay for years, had 2 major mine safety disasters occur under him, and drug addiction soared. Is Joe Manchin to blame for a great deal of the state's societal ills, or is this just bad luck?
Well, I think if you're clear thinking, you can figure it out. Joe Manchin was also behind getting rid of workers' compensation and privatizing it. I remember when UMWA, they were supporting him, and I went over to Carlo Tolli, and I said, Carlo, what are you all thinking? You don't support somebody. He's going to get rid of workers' comp, and he's going to privatize it, which means that, it's going to make it harder for workers to get a settlement. Are you all crazy? Because workers' comp is going to, privatize. They're going to make some money somewhere. Somebody's going to be squeezed. It's not going to be the corporations. You know that. Oh, now, Charlotte, he's not going to. I know, Joe. I said, I feel like if he does privatize it, I'm going to come down and punch you out, Carlo. I didn't do it, of course, but I threatened to. Because I knew he was going to privatize it, which he did.
Do you think the mainstream media, excluding third, fourth, and fifth party candidates from their debates, is moving America forward or backwards?
Well, that's right. I mean, even it's fascism, it's totalitarianism, it's censorship. It's not democracy. It's not a republic. This is what's embarrassing. Even Russia lets all of their candidates speak and participate in the debates. When I was running in 2016, there was someone at one of the satellite countries from Lithuania. She was speaking when I was over in the Eastern Panhandle. She was there, and she said, "What is this about you not being able to speak, to be in the debates, to be able to be, what?" And I said, she said, "How do people tolerate that?" She said, "There are 10 different parties, and all of them participate. And in our country, we wouldn't stand for people not being able to participate." That's what I mean. We like to say that China and Russia are the communist, socialists. Well, people are so stupid they don't even know that those countries have more freedom than we do. We've been so dumbed down. We're not really that stupid. We've been stupefied. We've just been so dumbed down by listening to the mainstream media or the Washington Post and New York Times, not realizing that they shill for the establishment and they shill for warmongers. Not knowing the Washington Post is owned by Jeff Bezos, who has a $600 million contract with the CIA, for God's sake. And that Politico is kind of tied in with the Washington Post. And Politico is simply just another arm of the establishment. And that their fact checkers are concerned, and Wikipedia are all controlled by the same people. So, it's just, we're the most unthinking people on the planet, I think. People laugh at us all over Europe because they think we're just a bunch of stupid yahoos over here. I have, friends in France. I have friends in different parts of the country and the world, and I don't know how to defend this. There's no way of defending it. And they say, you don't have an opposition party. The Democrats are as bad, if not worse, than the Republicans. What are they doing with all this censorship? And your people what's wrong? They're not stupid. I mean, surely they can think beyond this. They can see that this is not democracy. And the Democrats are the ones yelling for censorship. What's wrong with them? I don't know. I'm not a part of that party anymore.
You were friends with Ken Hechler.
Yeah, I was a friend with Ken Hechler. Mm-hmm.
What did you like about him and his politics?
I liked the fact that Ken actually was not afraid to stand up to, he stood up to, and the Senator Byrd's he told Byrd off. He said, you didn't help Charlotte Pritt. You turned against us. You should have been helping her. He told me before he died, he said, that man is not a good man, Byrd. And I told him off about it too. But, Ken didn't mind standing. He stood for the miners. He from there he was the one who got the mine health and safety bill through Congress. And, he was very, very much, going to bat for education and for miners. And Ken was really there. And he told me something, he asked me who was going to be doing my biography. And I said, oh, Ken, why would anybody want to do my biography? He said, of course. He said, you're the real deal, Charlotte. He said, you've really cared about the people more than anybody else. He said, if I had the money, I would be doing, he said, if I had longer, I would be doing it. I'll do it. I'll make sure it gets done. I said, Ken, why would anybody? He said, I know the one person I knew who'd be standing there when I was standing up for the people and all these marches. You were there. You were the one that was there. You would be there. You were there when we did the march. You were on the picket lines and spent the night on the picket lines during the piston strike. You were there with the miners. And he knew that. The miners called me, the miners' wives called me and said, Roy Blankenship has been shot and they're shooting at us and we need help. And I said, well, we heard your daddy was a coal miner. Please come and help us. I said, well, I'm a school teacher and I teach school, so I don't know when I'll be able to come down there. But I said, have you gotten in touch with your senator? I said, yeah, they're not coming over here. It's Earl Ray and Tomlin and Chafin and nobody will come. And I said, well, I'll do the best I can. I'll see what I can do. So I called Andy Gallagher. I said, Andy, they're shooting people down and we need to get down there and help them, because usually if there's a press or somebody there, they won't. The company won't shoot. And he said, Pritt, you're crazy. I'm not going down there. They are shooting people. I don't want to get shot, and you ought not to be going down there either. I said, well, I am going, Andy, because they need someone. They can't get anybody else down there to help them. And so I tried to call different people to go with me. And I told my mother, I said, Mother, I guess I'm going to go tonight. She said, well, honey, it's raining. I said, well, I'm it's a Friday night or Saturday night. If I don't go tonight, I won't be able to go. And I want to spend at least one night with them on the picket, on the picket line down there, and to see what's going on. And she said, well, you let me know. Stop by here before you go down. Let me know. And Dad couldn't go, and he had a disc that was out, and so he had to be in his bed most of the time. He said, now you're not going down there. And he said, you're not going down there. He said, it's too dangerous. He said, I know what that's like. You're not going down there. I said, Dad, if they called you, would you go? He said, hell yes. I'm a man. I said, Dad, you're not able to go. I'm going to go represent our family. He said, no, you're not. I said, Dad, I'm going to represent you and me and our family, to be with them. And so I went out to Billy Balgus's place. Billy, forgive me, because he didn't want anybody to know. He's not a union person at all. And, he's Republican mostly out here. I don't know if Billy's Republican or not. Probably is, because Sissonville's mostly that. But Billy and I dated in high school some, and I knew his family. And I said, Billy, he said, what are you doing dressed in all that camouflage? I said, I'm getting ready to go down the picket line down in Logan. And he said, well, I thought they were shooting people. I said, they are, but that's why they call. They need help. He said, well, you're not big. What are you doing? Are you crazy going down there? I said, Billy, I need some food. Do you have any day-old food? Because I want to take some food with me. So I think there are about maybe 5 different picket, shacks or places, and I want to take some food down there. And he said, I'm against unions. I'm not for unions. I said, Billy, these are West Virginians. You're for West Virginians, aren't you? Well, you're for people like me. I'm a part of a union. My dad's a part of the union, just like me. If I were hungry and needed help, would you come? He said, well, yeah, you are. Yeah, but I said, well, these people need help. All right. But don't you? I said, well, I'll be sure and tell you. Don't you tell anybody I did that. I know. No, I don't want to be telling. I don't want anybody knowing I'm helping union people. I said, okay, just me. And I thank you for it from the bottom of my heart. And he gave me like 5 big grocery carts full of food. I put that in my car and I stopped Mother and Dad. So I said, I'm getting ready to go. Mother said, well, honey, who's going with you? And I said, well, Mother, I couldn't find anybody brave enough to go. So I guess it's just going to be me. She said, I'm not letting you go by yourself. And Dad said, what? Tina, you get back here now. You get back here. He said, Garnet, I'm not letting her go down there. I'm going to take my embroidery. We'll be back. We'll be back on Sunday. We'll be back. We'll be okay now. And can you get some? Oh, I'm saying right now, you two get right back here. Get back here. I mean, and he was yelling as we went out the door. She said, honey, we love you. We'll be back later. And so Mother said, I'm not letting you go in by yourself. She said, I'm taking my embroidery. We'll take this stuff. Give me a few minutes. I'm getting everything together, and we're going to go together. My mother went with me. We went down and spent the night on the picket shack. When I first got there, I went to the picket shack, and we got shot at. And I said, oh, my gosh. They said, Senator, Senator. And then there was not another shot. And I said, well, guys, if they kill me, you better win this strike. If they don't, I'm going to love testifying against the company on this one. And so there was not another shot while my mother and I were there. And because nobody knew that I was coming. They didn't know. Nobody knew. I just showed up. And then I came in. I said like this. And then just was there listening. And that's when they I guess they had been shooting, and they shot while I was there. And then when I left the next day, after Mother and I slept and I have pictures somewhere of us sleeping in the tent and being down there. I stopped by the state police office to file a report about being shot at. And they said, well, Senator, that's interesting because we had the company file a report that you all were shooting against them. I said, well, that's a bold-faced lie because they didn't know that I was coming. There were no guns. I looked around and we had no ammunition. I went to different ones and I looked at everything. They had no guns. There was no shooting. And I was there when they shot at us, and I want to file a complaint. And I want to testify if this goes to court. And I filed my complaint. And then one of the police officers walked me out and said, Senator, can I walk out with you? And I said, well, certainly, come on. And we walked out, and he leaned over and said, Senator, my father, I have family who are coal miners. They would not let me be one of the persons, up there to whatever. And he said, they can listen. They have I forget what kind of, I guess you can buy them at Radio Shack or whatever, but they listening devices that can hear for like a mile away. So they're hearing everything that you all say. The company's hearing everything that you say. And that's why there was no more shooting, because they realized there was a senator there. But you need to go back to those guys and write a piece of paper, let them know that everything, they're being listened to, there's surveillance, they can hear everything within a mile radius of the picket line there. And I did. I went back and I wrote on a piece of paper that the company is hearing everything you say. They have radar or listening devices or that it can intercept, and they can hear everything that all of you are saying there on the picket line. So if you're planning anything, they know about it already. What you want to do, if you want to mess with them or misinformation, you can talk about it. Or if you're planning any kind of anything else, don't say it. So, even our state police is on the side of corporations.
Do you think Joe Manchin could have done more to keep that Beatrice plant, formerly the Mylan Pharmaceutical plant, open?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. He could have. Why not turn it into an ESOP? Employee stock ownership. Joe Manchin is a corporatist. He's not loyal to the people of West Virginia. He's loyal to the people who control him, the Koch brothers. He was the only Democrat that was an officer, and the only Democrat in the Senate that was a member of ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Council. He may not be now. Maybe got enough sense that if you're going to pose as a Democrat, you've got to be sneaky about the things you do.
As a Democrat, you came out in support of Jesse Johnson for governor in 2008. Do you think this was perceived as flipping the bird to the Democratic Party?
I don't know what it was. It was, I think that most people know that I'm a person who wants to do problem solving, and I go for the right person on the right issues. And I think they probably gave up on me a long time ago because they realized that I'm not addicted to a party label. I'm addicted to solving problems and going with people of integrity. So I don't really care what they thought.
You've been vocally supportive of whistleblowers like Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning and WikiLeaks publisher Julian Assange, all of whom the U.S. government has gone after for releasing classified government documents detailing illegal domestic spying, torture, and war crimes. Why do you think the American public is more interested in keeping up with the Kardashians than learning how their tax dollars is being spent on killing people and invading Americans' privacy?
I think there are several things. I think there are some people who are clueless, as I mentioned earlier. They just don't know the facts, and they just mouth whatever they hear on their favorite CNN, MSNBC, or or Fox News, or they're just parroting. They're clueless, and they just are kind of zombies, and they've been stupefied. Then you have those who are cowardly. They don't want to know. So, and then there are those who are cowardly because they don't want to be ostracized from the tribe. If you say something about whether, like Julian Assange, oh, well, he's a such and such. Well, no, he's not. You don't have any information about that. What are you basing that on? If he's an award-winning whatever. I mean, what we're doing is torture. The Obama administration, Hillary, Obama, and Biden should be held as criminals, war criminals. This is torture. And Trump. And then whoever else continues it. Biden, Harris. It's what we're doing is against international law.
Do you think Joe Biden should pardon Edward Snowden and Julian Assange?
Absurd. Of course he should. I mean, any sane, if you really lived in a democracy that honored freedom of speech, of course. I mean, this is either people are complicit. I think that people can't handle the fact that we live in a very fascist, totalitarian government, and we have been for years and years and years. It's not whether we're fascist or totalitarian. The debate is, when did it start? Some people think it started even before Kent State. Kent State was a very true picture. Fascism in its, mowing down our National Guard, mowing down dissenters, people dissenters, our own people, white people. I mean, they've been doing to people of color like Native American. We've been fascist, warmongering exploiters from the beginning. With the Native Americans. We tried genocide on them, and then what we did to the African Americans, and then what we did to the Japanese during World War II, and then what we did to, over and over and over, our own people going against the warmongering, pathological, psychopaths who want to just continue getting us in war. So
you have a controversial side. When Coal Country Clinic physician Dr. Michael Kostenko was convicted of a felony for drug distribution, not for legitimate medical purposes, and sentenced to 20 years in prison, you defended him. Nearly half of his patients were on Oxycontin, which he prescribed. 2 died from overdoses. Why defend him?
Well, all I did was talk about the character witness of whom I knew him when I knew him before. And Dr. Kostenko, there were 2 things that I wanted to talk about, because what I knew about Dr. Kostenko, when I knew him, he was a different person, obviously, from what he became. When I knew him, he was doing procedures like chelation therapy that other people would not do, which a lot of people needed done. And I had done chelation therapy to remove mercury poisoning when I had the mercury and had a lot of mercury poisoning. And we used like EDTA and other kinds of things that they had used for World War II veterans who had been gassed. And so I wanted that side to be there. And the other side that I knew, he and Dr. Amjad had been working on some of the problems with the pollution down there and testing patients with high levels of, I forget what it was, like a chemical that was in there because of the problems that they were having because of the polluted water. And as you recall, Dr. Amjad had a sudden heart attack in the parking lot. He was a doctor there in that area. And then Dr. Kostenko was sent to prison. So the work that they were doing to prove that the citizens in that area were being adversely affected by the drainage of the coal or the chemicals that were coming off one of the plants or one of the coal companies down there was stopped. And I simply wanted to be able, I didn't bring that up, but I wanted to put that into reference. And I also did the judge, like Mike Rourke, who was also caught he was a federal prosecutor putting people away. And Mike Rourke was a good friend of mine and my husband's, primarily of my husband, and we loved Mike. But Mike was caught selling, I don't know, which one was it, opium, heroin, something, as it goes back to a case, but selling something that he was putting people in prison for, prosecuting. And they kind of gave him a light sentence. And I brought that up, and Judge Berger did not like that at all, because it was like Dr. Kosinko was doing something as a doctor that he shouldn't have been doing, and so was Mike Rourke. But there was a double standard, for people if they were part of the establishment at one time. And I just was there because, and I was asked if I would be able to say a few words, and I said yes. I remember Dr. Kosinko when he was doing a lot of progressive things for people. And I remember also that he was working on trying to be able to monitor and expose the fact that people were getting cancer and getting really sick from the mine drainage or whatever was happening in that area. Now, I can't recall exactly what it was they were working on, but he and Dr. Amjad both, Dr. Kosinko went to prison. Dr. Amjad died suddenly of a heart attack. And I always wondered what a tragedy that was, because that stopped any kind of work on that end.
How do you think West Virginia can better effectively deal with the opioid epidemic?
By legalizing cannabis. It's been shown that in states that have full legalization for recreation or for medical use, that people have access to it and can grow their own plants, that the opioid deaths have dropped by 1/3. We were targeted in Appalachia because we're very outspoken and we're pretty anti-establishment resistant.
You sued the Republican Party for libel in 1998. It took 8 years for that case to be heard. What exactly did they say about you that was libelous? I don't even recall any of that time.
Well, they said that I wanted first graders to use condoms, and I wanted to X-rate. I mean, they said it was false, but because I was a public figure, that it was okay, that you could say false things about public figures. They admitted it being false, but they had all this stuff out, like that I was wanted children to see X-rated videos and all. They just took bills out of context and all kinds of ridiculous stuff. It wasn't true. They just put together like what they're doing now. They lie about people all the time. The media and everybody does. And like what Belinda Biafore did, lied about me taking money to Republicans backing me or giving me money to get in the race. They just lie.
How do you want the world to remember Charlotte Pritt when you are dead, gone, buried, and no longer among the living?
I want people to remember that. I want them to say she loved the spirit of the mountains and the people of West Virginia above all, and that she wanted to make certain that she, in whatever way she could, that she empowered them and all people of all faiths, of all religions, and that for people to remember her as honoring and knowing that we are all children of God of equal importance, regardless of our preferences, our race, our nationality, or our beliefs, our party affiliation, and that she knew how to love, and that she felt that love was the greatest and most powerful force in the universe, and that she truly was grateful for all living things, the trees, the water, the sunlight, the moonlight, the stars, clouds, and the beauty of our planet, and the beauty and the spirit of the people.
Hope you enjoyed the second episode of the Mothman and the Bible Belt podcast. Big thank you to our special guest, Charlotte Pritt. It was enlightening. We are currently on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Google Podcasts, and YouTube, with more podcast outlets to come. Check out MothmanandtheBibleBelt.com for podcast outlet updates, and to take you to our Facebook and Twitter pages so you can like and follow us and tell all your homies about us. Thanks for listening.